Wakey, wakey. Hello, good morning, and many thanks indeed for joining us here on Morning Prime. I am Dibala Nair, trusting that you had a lovely restorative night. It's another beautiful day, and this is the 4th of July 2024. A lot that we'll be keeping our eyes peeled to see how it will go down today, being also another day of protest, and I know many children are still at home. Despite the fact that we know most of them are bound to be going to school this week, but because of uncertainty, you don't want to take chances after we saw goons and what they did. And also, many have been arraigned, and also many right now will be answerable to some of the devastating, of course, damages that we saw, the looting and the pillaging that was happening, and also in the business fraternity, many now are complaining regarding this. The tourism sector is bound to be affected, despite the fact that it has ticked up, showing some good results as well. And we know the Nairobi Security Exchange has shed 63 billion shillings in 2 weeks. This is just because of also the levies as well, and the uncertainty thereof. We shall be looking at that today with the chairman of Nairobi Security Exchange. This is Kiprono Kitoni. Also, we'll be joined by the chair of CBK Pension Fund. This is Professor Dominic Mwenje, and we'll be joined by Professor Exen Iraki this morning as well, who is a professor at the School of Business, University of Nairobi. And today, of course, is all about Sokoni, and we want to see what are the blowbacks, the implications of this protest moving forward as far as the economy is concerned. And we've seen the MPs also, they have read the Route Act to SRC regarding the salary increments that was bound to be happening. The president also has said that has to be, the gazettement has to be reviewed regarding the increases that the MPs were bound to be getting, and also the governors as well, in light of being sensitive of what is happening to the current state of play as far as our economy is concerned. You know the drill. You can head over to our X handle, which is at KTN News, at Dibala Nair as well, where you can express your frustrations, express your questions as well, your contribution. And of course, we shall be looking at this much later in the course of the program. But for now, let's put this horse into a full run by looking at what we have in the weather today. this is what you're waking up to on the front page of the dailies today. Looking at the Standard, this is the splash for you today. Senate to Ruto, rid yourself of excess baggage. That is what is on the front page of the Standard today. It's all about decisions. Senators, while debating the state of the nation, told the president that for him to ride out the protest storm, he needs to fire the cabinet and advises drop the CS's idea and disband unconstitutional officers. You have a story on page 4 of the Standard today. And remember, on the issue of the CS's, we of course have it on good authority that the Senate, or not really the Senate, the Public Service Commission had actually written to the public's, that is the head of public service had written to Public Service Commission to make sure that that is streamlined. This is the offices of the CSs in regard to the latest that we had with the national amendment, that is the national amendment bill, that is administration bill that was bound to be, or it had gone through Parliament, and the president was given the leeway and the liberty to appoint whatever number of CSs that he wants to appoint. And so we'll see how this will pan out. And some of the sentiments that were expressed on the floor of the House yesterday, we'll air that for you. We have Boni Khalwale saying, I call, that is quote unquote, I call on the president to disband the cabinet and reconstitute it afresh. Do away with the Chief Administrative Secretary Office of the First Lady. Also, Aaron Cheriot. The Senate wants the National Police Service to cease abductions, unlawful arrests, extrajudicial killings, and exercise restraint. Also, Edwin Sufuna, Nairobi Senator, I'm calling for an audit for all cases that have been withdrawn by the Director of Public Prosecutions. And you have a story inside the publication this morning. No pay rise for MPs. Government officials yesterday fell over themselves to deny any role in a salary increase notice for elected leaders, with executive and other senior members saying the timing is not right as budgets are being trimmed. You have a story on page 6. And July 1st, that's the date the salary increment for senior government officials was supposed to start. The raise has been stopped. And court asks for more witnesses in Mandago case. That is on page 12. And we can also look at the teaser on top here. JSS teachers money wars add to schools protest anxieties. That is on page 11. AG flags shady deals in KAA audits. That is on page 18 of the Standard today. 120,000 babies stolen in Georgia. That is on page 22 of the publication today. Pressure piles as Euro gets to quarters. That is the Standard. The Daily Nation jitters as Ruto cabinet purge looms. That is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Reshuffle. Anxiety has gripped top officials in both the executive and parliament, keen to assuage widespread disaffection among the youth who have taken the country hostage with mass demonstrations. President William Ruto is said to be planning a major shakeup of his executive in a move that will see more ministers and PSs moved or sent packing. And you have the story on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. Why some MPs fear visit to constituents. The short recess for members of parliament, which started last week and runs to July 22nd, is turning out to be one of a kind, especially for lawmakers who voted in favor of the Finance Bill 2024 that has been withdrawn. You have a story on page 3 of the Daily Nation today. How goons infiltrated youth's protest. That is on page 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation today. And why President stopped pay rise for state officers. That is the story that you want to follow the back page of the Daily Nation this morning. Dissolve cabinet. Ruto allies demand. Dissolve cabinet. Ruto's ally demand. MPs allege widespread graft, mismanagement and lack of confidence. And this is why President's closest allies join growing calls for sweeping changes in government on page 4 and 5 of the styles, where you can follow the story. Gen Z protesters shot dead in demo buried in Narok. And also you can see related pictures to demonstrations as well, splashed here on the front page of the Star today. Counting losses. Sunbeam shopping mall along Mfangano Street was burnt during demonstrations in Nairobi CBD. A vandalized designer shop along Moi Avenue in Nairobi. Vandalized Davi Chemist along Nyerere Road in Mombasa as well. And those who looted during Tuesday's protest were not Gen Z, says Raila. This is on page 2 of the Star today. Taifa Leo, mawaziri hofu tele. That is what we have as a splash. Duru zasema Rais Ruto anajiandaa kuwafuta kazi mawaziri na makatibu fisadi. That story on page 2 of Taifa Leo today. And also JSC ya sitisha waajiri wa majaji 11 wa rufaa. Maandamano washukiwa 15 kukaa seli kwa siku 7. And also you can read all about madeni ya lemaza magavana 30 hapo. That is in Taifa Leo today. All right, let's see what the Business Daily is holding for us. Public wage bill up 29 billion shillings, even as SRC freezes pay rise. Still, that has ticked up, and the pay rise will have also affected this going up. 24.8 billion shillings pay increases approved in 9 months. To March, 4.2 billion shillings went into hiring medical interns for UHC. That is another story that you want to follow inside the Business Daily this morning. Why only banks recorded faster growth in Q1? Only the banking sector recorded faster growth in the first quarter of 2024, reflecting the hefty profits lenders raked in from high interest rates. And BOC Kenya delays dividend pay to November the 6th. Shareholders of BOC Kenya are facing a 4.5-month wait to receive their dividends for the year ended December 2023 after the company postponed its AGM. Court upholds jail term for ex-NSSF boss. A former NSSF investment manager was jailed for 14 years in 2022 over the loss of 1.2 billion shillings at the fund, and will serve the remainder of his sentence after he lost an appeal. You can follow the story on page 8 of the publication today. Core inflation unchanged despite consumer prices drop. Non-food, non-fuel inflation or core inflation was unchanged in June at 3.4% despite a significant drop in overall consumer prices. You can follow the story on page 4 of the publication today. Treasury budgets cuts, delayed payments, derailed road projects. That story on page 2 of the Business Daily this morning. Alright, in Uganda, UNRA, 21 agencies hit in new hiring freeze. Margin chopping board, that's the question. The fate of thousands of employees across government parastatals has gone back to the floor of Parliament after the executive directed for the retabling of the repeal bills 2024. You have a story on page 4 and 5 of the publication today. Some of the faces also are splashed here on the front page of the Daily Monitor in Uganda, and also their attendant figures as well. They are all here on the front page. Katanga case, defense wants prosecutor to turn into witness. And on national news, LC polls hang in the balance with new term. You can follow the story inside the publication today. Burora now remanded over hate speech. That is also inside the publication. In Tanzania, why writing was on the wall for Trade Minister TRA boss? The multiplicity of factors meant that it was just a matter of time before President Samia Suluhu Hassan removed Industry and Trade Minister Ashatu Kijaji and TRA Commissioner General Alfayo Hidata, who on Tuesday appointed Minister of State in the Vice President's office, that is Environment and the Union, and the Presidential Advisor, respectively. You can follow the story on page 2 of the publication today. You see how Mozambique, Tanzania can boost trade, that is on page 3, and HESLB now defends new loan recovery approach on page 8 of the publication is where you can follow the story today. From reporter to CEO, the story of a media executive. There is an exit interview here after a long, of course, dedicated work at the Citizen. That is the story that you can follow inside the publication today on page 4. The East African this week is holding no compromise as the splash. He will never have a military base on our shores. Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed tells Ethiopia, which he accuses of bad faith. He is also putting Shabab on notice as AU mission winds up. This is the story on page 8 and 9 of the East Africa. Wage against more taxes sweeps East Africa. Census, why Ugandan family is now smaller. All that inside the publication. Strong ties to deepen, get broader scope. That is what is on the front page of the China Daily. Sino-Kazakh pay partnerships to expand as nations aim to double trade. A time to reflect on China's goal for the world also is on the publication today inside the China Daily. The Economist, France's center cannot hold. This is what is on the front page of the publication today. And what to expect from a second Biden term? Can countries get rich from services? China's big chance to change, making heavy weather of hot weather. That is how the publication goes. And you can see also the related picture. The betting scandal, another crisis for Tories, even as they are heading for elections. And also, teaching or preaching. The 10 Commandments in Louisiana schools, that is a week as well. You can follow the story inside the publication, the week. This is the US edition. Looking at the editorial cartoon, break glass, that is break glass, I should say, in case of peaceful demonstrations, how the goons have been used in this peaceful protest to scuttle the whole demonstration. And this is what Victor has drawn inside the Daily Nation today. And since independence, this is how it has been. Tribal cocoons, party honchos, they've been hefty and big on our shoulders as far as elections is concerned. Now that seems to be flipped by the Gen Z. This one seems, as we go into the 2027 elections, it will be tribeless, it will be partyless. Of course, as Gen Z, they've not shown any leading figures for who is moving or pushing the envelope as far as the demonstrations or the protest is concerned. And listening to the ground. This is how the SRC has been listening to the ground. Right now, this is the biggest debate regarding the pay rise and how also the president has said that Gazette notice has to be reviewed. Also, we saw how the legislators were crying. So that is how also that has been going on as far as the pay rise is concerned. I'll give you that particular, of course, notice all the story momentarily. But for now, we just want to hear from our panelists who are already here. This is what we have also inside the People Daily. It is true. Life has become so expensive. I need more money. This is all about allowances, MPs, salary increment as well. Thank you very much. I'm joined, as I mentioned earlier, by Professor, I should say. This is Dominic Mwenje, and of course, who is the chair of CBK Pension Fund, and we're joined also by the chair of Nairobi Security Exchange. This is Kiprono Kitoni, and we'll be joined by also Professor Exen Iraki, who is a professor at the University of Nairobi as well this morning. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. All right, and also we are live on Spice FM this morning as well. Good to see you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Debal. Good to be here.
Yeah, I think the last week you were hit deep in the heat of what? The elections in
Yes.
yeah, the KTD elections, upcountry, yes.
Activities, yes.
How did it go?
It went okay. I mean, the people did choose, and we finished that exercise. Yes.
And I can see also some people are raising hesitation on the fact that some of the directors who are heavily involved when we had the sex predators, in the farms as well, have been elected.
You know, Debal, Kenya is going through a watershed moment, and I believe that we are developing a whole new moral compass. And that moral compass, in my opinion, should lead to an ethical code of conduct, and I hope that those are the discussions we are having today.
Yes, indeed, you did. Yes. All right, Prof, good to see you as well. You've been out of the country. You're back.
Nice to see you, Debal.
Yes.
I've been out of the country for 2 weeks. And we came back to a totally new country in terms of where we are. And all of a sudden, as we are looking at this from when I was overseas, the moral compass of this country has changed directions. And this is a compliment to our young people that we have seen on the streets. The Gen Zs. These are really our children, and they have told us, you older people, you have failed us in a way. So this is time that we hit the reset button. So we are looking forward to more discussion on the same. because the issue of governance and the issue of doing the right thing, I think now is at the forefront in this country.
All right, thank you. And of course, we shall be looking at that much later in the course of the program. But the protest by Gen Z appear to have began bearing fruit after the Salaries Remuneration Commission halted an upward review of salaries for state officers. Among those affected are members of parliament who were set for a salary increment, as well as governors and other state officers working in the country, in the county governments. The move follows anger directed at the entire government and parliament that forced the executive to abandon the crucial, controversial, but necessary Finance Bill 2024 that helps fund government's operations. Following the ongoing Gen Z protest, the entire government has been forced back to the drawing board after President William Ruto announced that all organs of government should brace for major budget cuts. Grace Ganga, start us off.
One would question the timing of the move by SRC to increase salaries, with mounting pressure from the Gen Z to reduce the salaries of MPs from the current over 700,000 shillings to only 200,000 shillings. The plan from the pay rise for MPs and other state officials, including governors and other state officers, came on a day that anti-government protests had paralyzed the entire country. Currently, MPs earn a salary over 725,000 and they would have received an extra 14,000 shillings at the end of this month. Besides the salary, MPs also earn a sitting allowance of 7,500 per sitting, among others. But following the public anger, the move for the pay rise has now been stopped.
The staff of Parliament have to be honest with Kenyans. In the way the budgets of Parliament are prepared, there are ways and means of reducing the expenditure in this House in a manner that will reduce the burden on taxpayers.
Who has sent them to fuel discontent in a country at a time that this country is bleeding? How dare you publish salary increments for public and state officers at such a time as this?
Good people, we have been told that it's not possible, that members of Parliament will never do it. We don't have an option. We must do it, Mr. Speaker.
But in a quick turn of events, the SRC has beaten a hasty retreat and froze the plan for the pay hike for MPs, governors, as well as other state officers. According to the chairperson of SRC, Lynn Mengich, the move is as a result of current realities of economy and budget cuts.
Therefore, in consultation with the National Treasury, SRC hereby freezes the upward review of salaries for all state officers and will review the advice for all other officers, taking into account the current realities of the economy, taking into account any contractual commitments and reduced budget.
When announcing the plan to withdraw Finance Bill 2024, President William Ruto put the entire government, including other organs such as Parliament and Judiciary, on notice, saying they should expect major budget cuts occasioned by reduced revenue. A statement released by Public Service Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria earlier Wednesday said he will not implement the pay rise, arguing that all institutions in public sectors need to make sacrifices as they expect other Kenyans to do. Coming hot on the heels of this are governors who also called for immediate withdrawal of the proposed salary increments for all county state officers, including them. The statement says, and I quote, "This is our noble duty as we collectively reflect on a prudent fiscal sustainability strategy for the country." The quick reactions rejecting the pay rise came on a day that President William Ruto, through his spokesperson Hussein Mohammed, directed the National Treasury to review the Gazette notice issued by SRC, saying the country should live within its means. Under the new structure, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, Cabinet Secretaries and the Attorney General was set for a pay rise of 33,000 shillings. Others who are to get this amount include the head of public service, Felix Koskei, and the secretary to the cabinet, Mercy Wanjau. On the other hand, Principal Secretaries and Inspector General of Police Japhet Koome, National Intelligence Service Director General Nudin Haji were also set to get a salary rise of 27,325 shillings. Notably, only President William Ruto's 1.4 million shillings and his deputies Rigathi Gachagwa's 1.2 million shillings were to be retained. The National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula and Senate Speaker Amason Kingi will have received a pay rise of 23,000 shillings. Grace Nganga, KT News, Nairobi.
Meanwhile, senators are demanding the cabinet be dissolved and sacking of Inspector General of Police Japhet Koome to assuage Kenyans unhappy with the performance of the Kenya Kwanza government. Contributing to a motion of the State of the Nation, the senators said the cabinet and Koome had failed to deliver, citing it as the reason for the low confidence in government. The senators, drawn from both sides of the political divide, also demanded for the removal of key officers in government, such as the Prime Cabinet Secretary, offices of the First Lady, as well as that of Second Lady, to cut down on the huge expenditures, as Daniel Karuki now reports.
And observe a minute of silence.
Senate Wednesday morning, the sitting was preceded by a moment of silence to remember Kenyans killed during the ongoing anti-government protest.
May God rest their souls in eternal peace.
Immediately thereafter, senators went for the Inspector General of Police, Japhet Koome, over his conduct in the protest, accusing him of incompetence.
It's been 2 weeks of protests, Mr. Speaker. Kenyans have lost their lives. Others have been beaten. There have been challenges. Police have faced also very difficult and hostile gangs on the streets. I am yet to hear the voice of the Inspector General. I am deeply troubled by that, Mr. Speaker.
Not spared either was President William Ruto's cabinet. Senators said it was too large and out of reality. They want it dissolved and reconstituted.
How can we face such a crisis, Mr. Speaker? Up to this particular point, I don't know what the Inspector General thinks. I don't know what is the challenge. We don't know these things that are being discussed. Mr. Speaker, the question at the back of my mind, is this really the right man for this job?
Mr. President, dissolve cabinet, reconstitute it. The president should quickly restructure the security organs by firing people, the IG included.
The issue of austerity measures dominated the debate as the senators pushed for more changes, including scrapping of some offices, especially those of president's advisors.
Including Prime Cabinet Secretary. It is not in the Constitution of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, including officers of First Ladies, including, Mr. Speaker, advisors. If advisors are useful, then what David Lee is doing is not advice, is misadvice.
Look at the number of advisors in government. There needs to be a public audit of all these advisors and tell Kenyans why it is okay for one office of the advisor on the economic matters, Honorable Khalwale, to have more money for travel than 9 committees of this House combined. It doesn't make any sense.
For the first time, senators across the political divide read from the same script, castigating the government, at one point forcing Senate's majority leader Aaron Cheriot to openly apologize to Kenyans for the misdeeds and excesses of President Ruto's government.
I'd wish to personally, and this is at a personal level, to tender my unreserved apology to the country for either by commission or omission, everything that I have contributed into getting us into the mess and the place that we are in.
This is a time of crisis. And at a time of crisis, the leadership must be demonstrated.
Hao vijana mabarobaro wamekuja kwenye maandamano wakiwa wao wako na chupa za maji wameshika katika mkono wao wa kushoto na upande wa kulia wameshika simu ili kuweza kurekodi ile historia ambao wamekuja barabarani. wakifanya maandamano wakidai haki.
The motion on the current state of the nation was moved by Senate Majority Leader Aaron Cheriot and comes at a time when the country is on the edge following the ongoing protest spearheaded by the Gen Zs. Daniel Kariuki, KTN News, Nairobi.
The political class is slowly adapting to the new reality of avoiding the use of non-political gatherings to address political matters driven by protests. This new reality was evident on Wednesday in Nyanyuki during the burial ceremony of Leah Wangari, elder sister to Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, where politicians avoided the microphone. Clement Masomo has more.
As the debate on Gen Z protests rages on in the country, with protesters piling pressure on the government to meet their demands, it seems the political class is gradually responding by refraining from politicizing non-political events. This shift was evident on Wednesday in Nanyuki during the burial ceremony of Leah Wangari, elder sister to Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. Laikipia Governor Joshua Irungu took to the podium to announce a unanimous agreement among the politicians present not to address the crowd.
Leo si ya kwamba ati hao viongozi wetu hawezi kuongea, najua kwamba walijipanga mzuri kuongea na sana sana kuleta labilabi zao, lakini wananchi leo tukubali ya kwamba tutabue wale tuko na wao hapa and their presence kukuja kwao hapa.
The funeral was attended by DP Gachagua, accompanied by more than 20 leaders from the region, including senators, governors, and members of parliament. Wangari was eulogized as a peace-loving family woman and the unifying factor in the Gachagua family.
She has created unity within our family and put God first. And amekuwa tegemeo kubwa sana kwa uongozi wangu, kwa maombi na mawaidha. So as I sit here today to escort her, the gap ametuachia ni kubwa na Mungu atatusaidia.
The DP also urged the leaders of demonstrations to allow the government to implement some of their demands, acknowledging their concerns. He noted that criminal elements had infiltrated what initially started as peaceful demonstrations.
What you started as peaceful protests, unfortunately, have been infiltrated and hijacked by criminals with a criminal intent, who are now engaged in looting and creating mayhem. I want to, as a father, as a parent, to appeal to my children, my sons and daughters. Listen to us as your parents. I think if you agree, we want to plead with you to call off the protests so that criminals do not hijack them.
Clement Masombo, KTN News, Laikipia County.
And as Kenya reels from the devastating effects of nationwide protest, business persons across the country accounting losses amounting to billions of shillings. A spot check by KTN News established that many business premises were broken into and looted by goons who took advantage of the 3-week-long anti-tax protest that later morphed into anti-government protest. As Catherine Imuragate reports, many businesses remain closed for fear of being raided by goons on the loose.
Many traders in the country continue to count losses due to the looting carried out by goons that have infiltrated otherwise peaceful Gen Z's protests. For instance, in Kitengela Town, Kajiado County, 50 kilometers from the Nairobi Central Business District, several establishments were looted and property destroyed. Hotels and entertainment were not spared, among them the famous Quiver Lounge.
Tulikuwa tumefunga kila place, so walikuja wakavunja vioo, wakaingia side za butchery, wakadestroy properties zenye zilikuwa hapo, chakula zenye zilikuwa hapo kama nyama walibeba, wakaingia ndani, wakavunja kila kitu. Wakavunja meza, viti, hata pombe walichukua. Vile unaona saa hii hata hizo counter hakuna kitu, walibeba pombe zenye zilikuwa hapo.
A few meters from Quiver is Nomad Restaurant. Here, the goons had a field day, looting and making away with property. CCTV cameras capture these goons making their way into their premises, one after another, with their faces covered. Upon seeing the camera at the door, they destroy it. They then shift their focus on breaking the door, but that is too big a task for them to accomplish. And after several failed attempts, they make their way to the back of the establishment. Moments later, they return with some luggage, proof that they have managed to loot this premise too.
Mali tunaelekea saa hii Kenya, hatuko tayari kupita hiyo njia. Wawache, na wengi ni goons, wanajifunga uso. Si tumeamua ukijifunga uso, hauonekani, si tunajua ni mkora.
Hao maandamano ilikuwa imeanza mzuri sana kwa hawa watoto. Lakini after about 2 hours, ndio tukaona kama ni watu wengine wametumwa kuja kutuharibia. Juu walikuwa wametarget. Wakatuambia wametoka Kuifa. Sasa wanataka kukula hapa.
The traders have urged President William Ruto to listen to the demands of the protesting youth to resolve the current impasse in the country.
Ruto, jaribu sana uongee na hawa vijana, maana ile mambo wanafanya ni mambo inatuharibia sisi kama wanabiashara wa Kitengela.
We have a constitutional means to change the government, but not to use other orthodox means.
On Tuesday, Interior CS Kithure Kindiki pronounced himself on the widespread looting by goons, vowing to protect property and the lives of Kenyans at all costs. Catherine Imuragit, KTN News.
And the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry has sounded alarm over significant economic setbacks caused by the ongoing protest. The body has reported a staggering 40 million Kenya shillings in export losses and a troubling 17% decline in export activity. Dr. Eric Ruto, president of KNCCI, voiced concern over the violence accompanying the protest, which has led to widespread looting and destruction of property, severely disrupting businesses nationwide. In response to the escalating unrest, the Ministry of Tourism has urgently called for resolution, warning of potential consequences for the tourism sector.
We process exports of around 3 million. And if you can count for the last 2 weeks, we've been losing 3 million every day. So that comes to approximately 40 million since the protest started. So in terms of the economic and the value that we have lost as a country.
Tourism is one of the leading foreign exchange earners in the country. Therefore, I would like to call upon our fellow citizens to ensure that as we celebrate the democracy that Kenya has, and we are one of the most vibrant democracies in actually sub-Saharan Africa, as a result of our constitution, we need to exercise it with a bit of consciousness in terms of the impact of whatever action we have in our economy.
During these skirmishes that have happened, we've hardly lost anything. We are at that point whereby we are being forgiven. So the way the tourist sector works is that there goes a period of time where people just observe and forgive that as a passing cloud. Now, if it continues, now that's when now the disruption in the sector comes in. So far, we're in that wait and see. So people are giving us benefit of doubt. But if it continues beyond now next week and others, we're going to see disruptions and we're going to see losses, which will include losses of jobs to many of our young people.
All right, that is the current state of play of how things are. Of course, those stories characterizing yesterday and, of course, the week that has been, so to speak, lay a segue for us to slice and dice these matters this morning, especially on how also the state of the economy is performing in that particular regard. And we know, looking at the Nairobi Security Exchange, 63 billion shillings so far has been lost in the last 2 weeks because of the levies and the uncertainty thereof. And we can see also from the tourism sector as well, that has been recording such a high increase right now. And we are waiting to see how the blowback of that will be as well. I'm joined this morning by the Nairobi Security Exchange Chair, Kiprono Kitoni, the chair of CBK Pension Fund as well. You can see Professor Exen Iraki will not be joining us this morning. He missed our confirmation to be here this morning, so I think there was miscommunication. But nonetheless, we continue pace with the conversation this morning. Bill Okero is away out of the country, and also Professor Geturo Wanaina was recuperating from the hospital yesterday. But gentlemen, just looking at that, let's just begin with you, Kiprono Kitoni, looking at, of course, where you were on that particular seat, where Dr. Ruto was, you also being the ex-chair of Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. This is not the first time that protests have been there before. I know there was a time in this country, 2017, 2018, we were at the height of it so far. But just looking and just giving us a general feeling of how things have been from your end as well, and how also that is affecting the NSC, you can just give us a highlight, what you've observed so far.
Thank you very much, Deban. I will begin by really congratulating the Gen Zs, the generation of our children, for giving Kenyans a voice, for calling out so much of the malpractice that has marked the leadership of this country, and for really taking us to this watershed moment where we need to start having the difficult conversations about where Kenya goes from here. And Debal, looking at the conversations in the Senate yesterday, I have no doubt in my mind that Kenya has changed forever. We are at a crossroad, and this is the point at which we need to bring all those conversations to the table. My second contribution, Debal, is really to convey my condolences to the families that lost their family members during these past 2 weeks. Many of them in very unfortunate circumstances, and also to the business owners who have lost, their livelihoods. We were just seeing the story of what's going on in Kitengela, and really it is very unfortunate that people would lose their livelihoods during such a difficult time in our economy, our economic dispensation. Debal, we are at a point where we need to look at the economic model and the political model that Kenya has. And I want to say that there could be no better time to start to ask ourselves whether the constitution that we promulgated in 2010 is still working for us. This government came in with a lot of promise, and they pronounced their vision, and they captured the imagination of Kenyans and got elected. But so soon after that, we saw a radical shift in their attitude, in their actions, and the fact that they were no longer, preaching water. They started to preach water and drink wine themselves. They started to, not listen. There was so much excess. We know very well that we are faced with significant economic challenges, and yet we could see in the leadership, their own actions were, completely to the contrary. This ostentatiousness, the callousness in which they dealt with the public. We've seen members of parliament acting like video vixens. Instead of going to parliament to legislate, they were making videos flaunting their new earned wealth. And I think for me, there could be no better time for the president to introspect and look at what he needs to do to take this country forward. I have never seen such candid conversation as we did yesterday in the Senate. And I think they just said it as it was. I mean, they have described and defined the problem that we have. And Debal, I'm a keen reader and a big fan of Lee Kuan Yew. And in his book, From Third World to First World, there are very many things that he points out. Lee Kuan Yew said that he had the option of leading that country, Singapore, and making himself among the top 10 wealthiest people in the world. The second option that he had was to make that not to pursue personal gain, not to pursue personal wealth, but to strive to make Singapore amongst the top 10 most competitive and successful countries in the world. He chose the latter. And I think the rest is history. We have seen it. But in Kenya, we have developed a society where, the end justifies the means. We've glorified corruption. Leaders' pronouncements are not reflective of what they were elected to do. We've seen a huge disconnect in the compensation of the leadership cadre compared to the rest of the country. And I have said it before, and I repeat it again, that as long as the biggest industry that we have in this country is politics, we cannot go far. Because for sure, I mean, for these politicians and top civil servants to be able to afford the lavish lifestyles that they have, it is at somebody else's price. And the reality, I'm a business person, the reality of running business in this country is that it is near impossible to choke a profit at the end of the month. In fact, if you run a business and you're paying rent and you're paying your taxes and you have to pay your employees, the reality of the matter is that majority of the business people are just rendering a public service. It is corporate social responsibility. So where do these profits go to? Obviously, they're finding their way somehow to these people who are supposed to be leading us and showing us the way. I love listening to country music. And one of my favorite singers is Kenny Rogers. And Kenny Rogers in the song The Gambler sings at some point that you've got to know when to hold on and know when to fold them. And I think it's a time for the president to know what to hold on to and know what to fold. Now, in regards to the economy, there is no doubt that the volatility of the last 2 weeks is going to result in quite a big downturn. Fortunately, I have looked at the indices at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, the All-Share Index, NSE 2025 Index, the NSE 10 Index, and fortunately, all of these are still on upward trajectory. However, investors tend to invest their money in safe havens. So for as long as we portray this image and as long as we are on CNN, KTN, Sky News and whatever, with these demonstrations, the reality is that there is going to be a flight of capital. So I would want to suggest to the Gen Z that I think it's a high time, and the message from the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry is very apt, and it has come in at the right time. It's the right time that the Gen Z considered holding back their demonstrations. And I would want to pray that this generation also exercise their civic responsibility of registering as voters. Because every 5 years as a country we get the opportunity to go back to the poll and elect the leaders that we want. And I want to say to the leadership that we are in the information age. There is nothing that you will say and nothing that you will do that will not be subjected to public scrutiny. This generation is highly informed. You cannot bluff them.
Right.
And we've seen on social media there's many platforms, X Spaces, etc., where they have a register of broken promises. So if you make a promise, for heaven's sake, be prepared to keep it.
Make good of the promise.
Yes.
But I wanted just to shed light on because we saw, I think yesterday also in the publication that NSE shared 63 billion shillings in 2 weeks as investors ruffled by tax protests. The finance bill, it says finance bill withdrawal fails to stop unrest, uncertainty sparks also the shilling volatility. Hearing you, you're saying all things are looking still optimistic. There hasn't been any sort of a spooking at the NSE. But what about this 63? Maybe you can shed some light on it if you're part of it.
Debal, I've made this point many times before that markets ebb and markets flow. And, we trade on a daily basis. We trade 5 days a week at the NSE. And the reality is that year to date, the shareholder wealth in the NSE has grown by close to 300 billion shillings. So it is possible that I haven't yet gotten the conclusive figures or the prognosis, but it is possible that we could have lost that 60 billion over the last 2 weeks. It is possible. But however, you must also remember that the backdrop of this is that notwithstanding the civil unrest that we have witnessed, over the last 2 weeks as well, the government has been able to redeem $560 million of the Eurobond, using proceeds from a World Bank facility of $1.2 billion. It's a good thing because it takes us off the list of the countries that will be defaulting on their Eurobond obligations. But the reality of the matter, it's digging one hole to cover another. Yes.
All right, we're taking up to 7 o'clock. We want just to take a short break right now. And of course, I like the fact that you mentioned the gambler and the Kenny Rogers. We'll find out. Yes, yeah. You got to know when to hold on, right? You got to know when to, of course, fold them as well. Know when to walk away and know when to run. And this is where the president is at right now. You got to know what to, of course, hold on. People are saying, okay, it's time maybe you should be dissolving the cabinet. A time now, maybe you should be also folding the office of the First Lady and the Second Lady, the Prime Cabinet's Secretary as well. Those offices, maybe you should let them walk away. We want to see how that will pan out on the other side of a break. We'll hear from Professor Dominic Mwenger as well, just to tell us what his feel and flavor of what has been happening lately. And moving forward as well, we see the president has given the indication that yes, a notice on the revocation of that gazettement or the gazette notice from the Salaries and Remuneration Commission on increasing the pay perks of MPs and the governors should not go full steam ahead in light of what the country is going through right now. We need now to be a bit sensitive. We'll take a short break. You're watching Sokoni here on Morning Prime, KTN News. When we circle back, of course, we continue with more.